Hello children, how are you all? I hope you are fit and fine. Children, as you all know, we have started yesterday chapter number 9 of your supplementary reader book, An Alien Hand. And we have completed few paragraphs, and you can say first part of the chapter we have completed yesterday. And today we are going to complete the comprehension check. So we have discussed yesterday the narrator, who is Ruskin Bond, and he just wanted to live with that. Ruskin Bond started living with his grandfather, and he went his grandfather. There he met a tiger. That was really amazing for the narrator, and he became his best friend. Now the comprehension check we are going to do today. So first is, he had the distinction of being the only member of the party to have bagged any game. So here children, let's start comprehension check after reading first part of the story. Comprehension check we are going to do. So here the first question is, he said, the distinction of being the only member of the party to have bagged any game. So now here the phrase in italicized mean. It means the italicized phrase is this: have bagged any game. So children, the phrase we should write the meaning of italicized phrase. So children, let's start. Grandfather was the most distinguished member of the party. Second, grandfather was the only sports person in the party. Now third one, grandfather was the only successful member of the hunting party. So here you can see, because Ruskin's Bond grandfather was really a good hunter, that is why it is written. So answer number 1 is, grandfather was the only successful member of the hunting party. So children, this is the first answer you can write. Now children, we are moving to second question. So you can find the second question. Complete the following sentences. Toto climbed up the curtain when dash, and the second is, when I came to dash, I became one of the tiger's favorite. And now the third is, Timothy had clean habits. Now children, let's complete this exercise. So children, I am going to write answer number 2. So I think it is visible. So in first, fill in the blanks, Timothy lost his anger. In the blanks you just write down Timothy lost his temper. When he lost his temper, Toto climbed up the curtain when Timothy lost his temper. Now, second, I am going to write, when I came to live came to live with my grandfather, with my grandfather, I became one of the tiger's favorite. I became one of the tiger's favorite. So children, write it down. Now I am going to write third one. Third is, Timothy had clean habits. Now I am going to write the answer. He could scrub his face with his paws exactly like a cat. Exactly like a cat. So children, write it down. Timothy had clean habits. He could scrub his face with his paws exactly like a cat. So children, complete it. Now we are going to start our next part of the story. So children, we are on page number 60 and we are going to start the next part of the story. So in this part of the story, the few points are given. So and Timothy, as Timothy grows up, he becomes less friendly and rather dangerous. Grandfather decides to transfer him to the zoo. 6 months later, grandfather pays Timothy a visit. Timothy is happy to see grandfather, or is he? Now, the next part of the story is turning at the new phase. And now here in this part of the story, you can see the transformation of behavior and attitude of the tiger. Because after all, he is an wild animal. And we should domesticate only few months. After that, these type of the animals will start revealing their own attitude and behavior, because they are, after all, they are wild animals. So children, let's start our next part of the story. One of these days, declared grandmother in her prophetic manner, we are going to find Timothy sitting on Mahmud's bed and no sign of the cook except his clothes and shoes. Now it was quite dangerous for the house, because tiger is now grown up and his attitude is completely changed. That is why grandmother saw that house of cook and only the shoes and the clothes of cook was there, but there was no the cook in person. That time, the grandmother was declared that it is quite dangerous to keep this pet inside our house. Of course, it never came to that. But when Timothy was about 6 months old, a change came over him. He grew steadily less friendly. Now here you can see his behavior was continuously changing. When Timothy was about 6 months old, change came over him. When he was growing up, that time his behavior was changing. He was not an obedient pet. He was dangerous. He just became a dangerous beast. He grew steadily less friendly. Now here, that tiger was adamant about his behavior and he was not at all friendly. When out for a walk with me, he would try to steal away to stalk a cat or someone's pet dog. Now, sometimes at night we would hear frenzied crackling from the poultry house, and in the morning there would be feathers lying all over the veranda. Timothy had to be changed up more often, and finally when he began to stalk Mahmoud about the house with what looked like villainous intent, grandfather decided it was time to transfer him to a zoo. Now children, in this paragraph we can see more new words that we are going to write the answers, and this is frenzied. So write it down. Loud and frantic. Loud and frantic. That is called frenzied. So here you can see the behavior of that tiger was continuously changing, and he became ferocious, and he would hear franchise. Now here you can see he grew steadily less friendly. When out for a walk with me, he would try to steal away to stalk a cat or someone's pet dog. Now when we used to walk with him, they just tried to escape to walk, and at the back side of ours, they just moved to attack any pet, whether it is cat or dog. So sometimes at night we would hear frenzied crackling from the poultry house. Poultry house is a place where we are keeping our hens or cocks over there. So that is called poultry house. Now here cackling, noise made by hens. Cackling means noise made by hens. Cackling means noise made by hens. Now, gradually they understood this. The family member understood this, and they just mentioned, the narrator had mentioned over here, Timothy was changed. And at night sometime they heard some cackling sound or noise from the hens, and when they woke up in the morning, they saw their feathers were spreading on the ground. So that was a really dangerous scene. And Timothy had to be chained up more often because of his attitude, because of his changing attitude. They started chaining him. Now, and finally, when he began to stalk Mahmoud about the house with what looked like villainous intent. Now, when the Mahmoud was killed, or you can say it was vanished from his home, so that time the image of that tiger became villainous. Villainous means it's like a villain. So now villainous intent matlab wicked and dangerous plan or idea. So I'm going to write this word meaning. So this is villain. Yes, intent. Intent is also along with this word, that is wicked and dangerous plan or idea. Wicked and dangerous plan or idea. So when Mahmud was not there in his house, so that time this type of the suspicion was there inside the house that maybe that tiger had killed. Now that is Mahmud about the house with the what looked like villainous intent. Grandfather decided it was a time to transfer him to a zoo. Now it was decided by the grandfather that we should transfer this beast to the zoo because it was quite safe place for this beast. It's not a domestic animal, it's a wild animal, so it should keep in the zoo where it was taken care. So reserving a first class compartment for himself and Timothy, no one who would share a compartment with them. Grandfather took him to the Lucknow where the zoo authorities were only too glad to receive as a gift a well-fed and fairly civilized tiger. Now here you can see, because he grown up like a civilized tiger, but because we are not going to tell this is the villainous tiger, or because the tiger, it's having its attitude, it's having its behavior. When it's grown up, it's showing its behavior because they are predators. They are predators, so there is no fault inside that tiger, because the people, the human being, those who are keeping as a pet, that was a fault for the that was the fault of the Ruskin-Bond family, because we should not keep these type of the animals as a pet, because their behavior, their attitude will change after some time. So that is why the grandfather was decided and it is planned to keep this pet inside the zoo. So here reserving a first class compartment. Now here the grandfather was reserved a first class compartment and they reached to the Lucknow in a zoo. So there you just the grandfather met the zoo authority and just handed over that tiger in the zoo. And they were very happy. The zoo authority felt very happy because it was really good for them that it was very fed, very healthy tiger, and it was well trained also. Now after 6 months later, when my grandparents were visiting relatives in Lucknow, grandfather took the opportunity of calling at the zoo to see how Timothy was getting on. I was not there to accompany him, but I heard all about it when I returned to Dehra. Now here, when the whole family visited the Lucknow for few reasons, so then the grandfather was decided to visit that tiger, because he just kept that tiger inside the zoo, so he visited. But what happened? Timothy was getting on. Now here you can see grandparents were visiting relative in Lucknow. Grandfather took the opportunity of calling at the zoo to see how Timothy was getting on. Now he just wanted to visit and before that he just called the zoo authority. I was not there to accompany him, and he went to the zoo, but the narrator was not there with the grandfather. But I heard all about it when I returned to Dehra. When I came back to Dehradun, then I heard about that, the incident of the visiting of to the zoo. So now here you can see, arriving at the zoo, grandfather made straight for the particular cage in which Timothy had been interned. The tiger was there, crouched in a corner, full grown and with a magnificent striped coat. Now here you can see, after 6 months when he visited that zoo, so the grandfather found a very full grown tiger was inside that cage. And it was, you can say, Timothy was interned, the tiger was there, crouched in a corner. He was just hiding himself inside the corner. So full grown and with the magnificent, beautiful stripes. So it was really an amazing animal. So, "Hello, Timothy," said grandfather, and put his arm through the bars of the cage. Now, because Timothy, this owner of Timothy, that grandfather, was really loved or taken care, so these type of the feelings was arised that time when he met after so long time. So he just called its name, that Timothy, and then he just you can say put his hand inside the cage. The tiger approached the bars and allowed grandfather to put both hands around his head. Now the tiger was approached to the bar, and he just allowed that grandfather to pat on its head. Grandfather stroked the tiger's forehead and tickled his hairs. And whenever he growled, smacked him across the mouth, which was his old way of keeping him quiet. And now, here you can see, as the normal tiger are behaving, the tiger was behaving like that. So this way they met to each other. He licked grandfather's hand and only sprang away when a leopard in the next cage snarled at him. Now he was just started licking the grandfather's hands, but what happened that when the other leopard had come over there, then he just pulling inside himself. Grandfather shooed the leopard away. Now here the grandfather is used to live with this type of the wild animals, so he just shooed. Shoot means is to sign off to go away from that place. That is the way the leopard away. Now, and the tiger returned to lick his hands, and वापस से that tiger returned to lick his hand of grandfather. But every now and then the leopard would rush at the bars, and he would slink back to his corner. And whenever the leopard was coming inside that cage, so then this tiger was it was looking that the tiger was scared of that leopard. So that is why whenever it was coming, so he just moved back and he just settled down himself inside the corner. So that is the attitude of that tiger. Now here you can see a number of people had gathered to watch the reunion when a keeper pushed his way through the crowd and asked grandfather what he was doing. Now here number of people were gathered over there because they wanted to see what was going on, because many of the people, those who are gathered over there, so they knew their relationship, because they knew that this is the owner of that tiger who just devoted or donated this tiger to this Lucknow Zoo. So that is why they gathered to watch the reunion of the owner and the animal. Now here you can see, I am talking to Timothy, said grandfather. Weren't you here when I gave him to the zoo 6 months ago? Now here, to watch this crowd, the zoo authorities person came there and they asked what was going on. So then the grandfather replied that I was the same person who had donated this tiger in the zoo 6 months before. So, I haven't been here very long, said the surprise keeper. Please continue your conversation, but I had never been able to touch him myself. He is always very bad-tempered. Now here, that new appointed zoo person said that you just carry on yourself, but I am very much new about this zoo, so I could not recognize you, or I'm just unaware about that incident, what was happened 6 months before. So you just continue your reunionship, and after all, he wanted to tell that this type of the attitude he never showed, that the tiger never showed to any person. So the new appointed zoo instructor said that this tiger is very bad-tempered animal. So that is why he never mingled with that person. So why don't you put him somewhere else, suggested grandfather. That leopards keep frightening him. I'll go and see the superintendent about it. So the grandfather said and suggested that why don't you not keeping this animal to the other cage, because this leopard is always frightening this tiger. So he just suggested, and he said that I'm going to talk with the superintendent of the zoo. Grandfather went in search of superintendent of the zoo, but found that he had gone home early. And so after wandering about the zoo for a little while, he returned to Timothy's cage to say goodbye. It was beginning to get dark. Now the grandfather went of search of that superintendent, but superintendent office was empty. No one was there because the superintendent went early to his home. So at that time he just roamed here and there, and the grandfather went back to the cage, same cage, the tiger's cage, Timothy's cage, and he wanted to say goodbye that beautiful and obedient Timothy, because he loved so much. Yeah, so then it was a beginning get dark, because it was I think that nearly 4 to 5 to 6 hours he spent over there, so it was nearly to get dark. He had been stroking and slapping Timothy for about 5 minutes when he found another keeper observing him with same alarm. Now while he was doing continuously that type of slapping and tapping and patting on his head, and the tiger was also responding him. So the scene which was going on beside this cage, the other person who was old, or you can say he was a senior worker of the zoo, he saw that scene, and observing this scene, with some alarm. Grandfather recognized him as a keeper who had been there when Timothy had first come to the zoo. And now here, grandfather recognized that person. Very firmly he said that, "You remember me," said grandfather. "Now why don't you transfer Timothy to another cage away from this stupid leopard?" Now again, because the superintendent was not there, so just he conveyed his message to the keeper. And because he was very possessive about this Timothy, because he loved so much that particular tiger, so he just suggested, or you can say he said to that keeper to keep this tiger away from this stupid or this foolish leopard, because all the time it was frightened him. So children, we have completed this second part of the story. Few paragraphs are left, so we will continue tomorrow and we will complete comprehension check also. So children, just read this chapter properly and solve the exercises and word meaning, learn the word meaning also. So we will meet again. Till then, bye bye and take care.